The air in the Grand Council chamber hung heavy, thick with the scent of old parchment, fear, and the metallic tang of ambition. Gyrus Haline stood, not as the queen she'd once been promised, but as a sacrifice, the chill of the stone floor seeping into her bones through the thin soles of her boots. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat of dread that drowned out the rustle of heavy robes, the hushed whispers of the Alpha Elders, and the suffocating silence that preceded an execution. For 6 years, she had given Bram Kestevar everything: her unwavering loyalty, her sharp mind, her truth, her very soul, believing their love was a shield, a bond stronger than any crown. But as Alpha King Bram Kestevar's gaze swept past her, cold and distant, falling instead upon the calculating faces of his council, she knew the blade was already falling, and it was her own heart on the block. The decree came swiftly, delivered by an elder with eyes as ancient and unforgiving as the mountains that cradled their territory. It wasn't a direct accusation, but a bureaucratic dismissal, a severing of ties orchestrated with chilling precision. Given the exigencies of the crown and the paramount need for unity within the Kestevar dominion, the elder's voice boomed, resonating off the high vaulted ceilings. It has been determined that the bond between Alpha King Bram Kestevar and Gyrus Haline must be formally dissolved. Her position as confidant and prospective consort is hereby revoked. The words were sterile, devoid of emotion, yet they tore through Cyrus like a physical blow. There was no mention of her devotion, her late-night counsel, the countless times she had stood as his bulwark against dissent. Only a clinical excision, a wound left to fester. Bram. He stood at the head of the polished obsidian table, his posture regal, unyielding. His eyes, usually a tempest of silver and gold when they met hers, were now shuttered, impenetrable. He didn't flinch, didn't breathe a word, didn't even offer a sympathetic glance. He simply watched the council, his jaw tight, his broad shoulders squared. He was the picture of a king making a hard choice for his people, for his power. And in that moment, the illusion shattered. The love she had nurtured, cultivated through shared burdens and whispered promises, evaporated into the frigid air. It had never been love, not for him. It had been convenience, leverage, a tool in his relentless ascent to absolute power. He had chosen the throne, not her, and he would always choose it. A gasp rippled through the gathered alphas, quickly stifled as if even surprise was an insubordination. Cyrus felt the collective weight of their judgment, their pity, their barely concealed relief. She was the Omega after all, the one without a grand lineage, the one whose wolf had always felt a little too quiet, a little too subdued. Her connection to Bram had been her only shield, her only status. Now, stripped bare, she was utterly exposed. The humiliation was a raw, burning brand across her soul. She could feel her own wolf, usually a hesitant presence, stir within her, a low, sorrowful whine echoing in the depths of her consciousness, a pain that transcended the human heart. It was the howl of a wolf cast out, left to scavenge. Cyrus Haline, the elder continued, his voice softer now, almost mournful. You are hereby released from all duties and ties to the crown. You will be provided safe passage to the nearest neutral territory, with a modest stipend for your immediate needs. Your loyalty to the king, however misguided in its personal expression, is acknowledged. Misguided. The word stung, a venomous dart aimed at the heart of her devotion. It implied she had been a folly, a distraction rather than an indispensable pillar. She swallowed the bitter taste of betrayal, tasting ashes and dust. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat was tight, constricted by a grief so profound it stole her voice, a feeling she had grown accustomed to in the past few months as Bram's affections cooled, replaced by a calculating distance. Mute, not by nature, but by the weight of too many unspoken truths, too many swallowed pleas. She simply inclined her head, a gesture of submission that masked a blossoming fury. Her eyes, however, found Bram's. For a fleeting instant, his met hers. And in that brief, painful collision, she saw it. Not regret, not sorrow, but a flicker of something she hadn't expected. Fear, a deep, primal fear that quickly vanished, replaced by the familiar mask of kingly stoicism. That flicker was a spark. It ignited a cold, hard ember within her, an understanding that transcended the pain. She had seen something in his eyes, a secret fear that his perfect, powerful facade could not hide. And in that instant she understood why he had to sever her. It wasn't just about the council's pressure or the need for a politically advantageous marriage. It was about her, about what she knew, about the truths she had inadvertently absorbed during their years together, truths that could unravel the very fabric of his carefully constructed dominion. The silence in the chamber stretched, taut and suffocating. No one moved. No one dared. It was Cirrus who broke the tableau, not with a defiant outburst, but with a quiet dignity that was more unsettling than any scream. She turned slowly, her gaze sweeping over the faces of the alphas who had once sought her counsel, now averted or filled with thinly veiled schadenfreude. She felt their relief at her removal, their eagerness to see her gone, a disposable relic of Bram's less calculating past. But she also felt a subtle tremor in the air, a faint scent of unease that lingered beneath the usual smells of their pack, pine, damp earth, and the faint coppery tang of ambition. This was not just a dismissal, it was an expulsion. Without another glance at Bram, without a word, she walked out of the council chamber. Each step was deliberate, a silent farewell to a life that had ceased to exist. The heavy oak doors thudded shut behind her, sealing her fate, sealing her away from the only world she had ever truly known. The castle corridors, once familiar and comforting, now felt alien, cold stone, pressing in on her from all sides. The soft tap of her boots on the polished floor echoed eerily, a lonely cadence in the vast emptiness. She passed guards who averted their eyes, servants who scurried away, unable to meet the gaze of the woman who had fallen from grace. She didn't pack much. A small leather satchel containing a few changes of clothes, a worn copy of ancient lore, and a silver locket, a gift from Bram in happier times, now a mocking symbol of his deceit. She left behind the rich garments, the jewels, the symbols of her former station. They were not hers, not truly. They were borrowed finery, now to be reclaimed by the king who had cast her aside. Her heart was a hollow drum, aching with a pain that went beyond personal rejection. It was the ache of a pack wolf severed from its kin, an Omega left to wander the wilderness alone. As she walked out of the castle gates, the cold bite of the autumn wind greeted her, sharp and unforgiving. The vast Kestevar land spread before her, rolling hills crowned by ancient forests, shrouded in the deepening twilight. She had believed this land, this pack, was her destiny. Now it was her prison, her past. But as her feet touched the rough earth outside the gates, a new sensation stirred within her. Not just sorrow, but a quiet resolve. The flicker of fear she'd seen in Bram's eyes had planted a seed. She might be an outcast, a disgraced Omega, but she carried something dangerous within her. Not just the searing pain of a broken heart, but the unsettling truth of a king's vulnerability, a secret that could unravel his dominion. And she knew, with chilling certainty, that Bram Kestevar would not rest until that knowledge was silenced, by any means necessary. The hunt had begun, and she, the seemingly powerless, was the prey, armed with nothing but a truth too perilous to keep and too deadly to speak. The Kestevar gates, once symbols of protection and belonging, now stood as an impassable barrier between Cirrus and her past. The cold autumn wind, once a refreshing kiss, now felt like a predatory whisper, stripping away the last vestiges of her former life. Each gust carried the biting scent of pine and damp earth, mingling with the phantom tang of Bram's betrayal that still clung to her like a shroud. Her small satchel felt absurdly light, a stark contrast to the crushing weight of her shame and the dangerous secret she carried. She was an Omega, unmated, unwolfed in the eyes of the pack, a vessel of quiet desperation whose only purpose had been to stand as a silent, loyal shadow beside a king. Now, even that purpose had been brutally revoked. The safe passage was a cruel jest. Two hulking Kestevar guards, their faces grim and uncommunicative, escorted her for the first day, their presence a constant reminder that she was not free, merely displaced. Their silence was more deafening than any accusation, echoing the unspoken verdict that she was unworthy. When they finally turned back at the border of what they declared neutral territory, their departure felt less like a release and more like an abandonment. The forest loomed before her, ancient and indifferent, its gnarled branches reaching like skeletal fingers against the bruised twilight sky. Here, the scents changed, growing wilder, more untamed, decaying leaves, wet moss, and the pungent musk of unseen creatures. Cyrus walked, driven by an instinct more primal than logic. Her body, once accustomed to the soft silks of the castle, ached with every step. The coarse wool of her simple tunic chafed against her skin, and the damp chill seeped into her bones. She hugged herself, not just for warmth, but as if trying to hold her fracturing self together. Her mind replayed Bram's impassive face, the way his gaze had bypassed her, choosing the cold approval of the council over the fiery devotion they had once shared. Love had never been part of his calculations. The words resonated like a death knell, echoing the quiet sorrow of her own wolf, a presence within her that had always been hesitant, easily cowed, now almost entirely silent. It was a phantom limb, a muted howl in the deepest recess of her being, a testament to her inherent weakness in a world that prized strength above all else. She was the Omega who had never truly found her roar, the wolf who barely whispered. And yet, beneath the crushing weight of her humiliation, a different kind of strength began to stir. It was a cold, hard resolve, born not of defiance, but of pure survival. Bram's fear, that fleeting flicker in his eyes, had become her anchor. He hadn't just cast her aside, he had tried to silence her. That meant what she knew was dangerous, and if it was dangerous, it was powerful. Days bled into nights. She navigated by the shifting stars and the fading memory of ancient trails. Her boots wore thin, her feet blistered, but she pushed on, fueled by a relentless need to put distance between herself and the Kestevar dominion. She foraged for berries, roots, and small game, her senses sharpening with each passing hour. The forest was no longer just a backdrop. It was a living, breathing entity, full of hidden dangers and fleeting moments of stark beauty. The rustle of leaves could be a deer or a predator. The snap of a twig could be an animal or a hunter. Every shadow held a potential threat. She caught scents now that she hadn't noticed before in the castle. The acrid tang of fox, the sweet decay of fallen timber, the metallic musk of a wild boar. And sometimes, a faint, unsettling aroma, the familiar yet alien scent of other shifters. Not Kestevar, but something different, wilder, more ancient. It was a scent that prickled her skin, raising the fine hairs on her arms, awakening a deep, instinctual unease in her quiet wolf. She was stepping into territories unknown, where the rules were unwritten and the alliances fluid. One evening, as she huddled beneath the roots of a colossal ancient oak, the moon a sliver of silver slicing through the canopy, she heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible snap of a twig. Too deliberate for an animal, too light for a full-grown wolf. Her breath hitched. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, barely daring to breathe. It was a scent too, faint but unmistakable. The dark, earthy musk of a Kestevar scout, subtly different from the territorial markers of the other packs she'd sensed. Bram hadn't let her go. He was hunting her. A cold dread coiled in her stomach, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of adrenaline, a primal surge that surprised her. Her quiet wolf, for the first time in what felt like years, stirred with a faint guttural growl deep within her. It was a warning, a flash of instinct, a defiant spark. She wasn't just a discarded Omega anymore. She was prey, yes, but prey that had learned to listen, to adapt, to disappear. She moved silently, rising from her hiding place, melting into the deeper shadows of the forest. Her steps, once hesitant, now flowed with a newfound grace, a quiet efficiency born of desperation. The hunt was on, and she, the supposedly wolfless woman, was the quarry. But as she navigated the treacherous terrain, scrambling over roots and through thorny bushes, another scent hit her, stronger this time. It wasn't Kestevar. It was something else entirely. A profound, musky scent of ancient earth, wild pine, and something else. Something dangerous and utterly dominant. It was the scent of a powerful, unfamiliar alpha, a territorial marker that vibrated with raw, untamed authority. She had stumbled out of one danger and directly into another. The Kestevar hunters were behind her, but before her, a new, formidable presence loomed. She was deep in a territory she didn't know, a territory claimed by a power that made the hairs on her neck stand on end, a power that smelled like shadows and ancient stone, a power that promised an entirely different kind of peril. Her quiet wolf, now fully alert, let out a deep, trembling whimper, a warning that chilled her to the bone. The scent of the new alpha hit Cyrus like a physical blow, a thick, primal musk of ancient earth, wild pine, and something profoundly dangerous, utterly dominant. It was not the polished, controlled power of Bram Kestovar, but a raw, untamed force that made the very air vibrate. Her quiet wolf, which had only just begun to stir from its long slumber, recoiled with a deep, trembling whimper, a primal instinct screaming danger. But even through the terror, there was a strange, undeniable pull, a visceral recognition of immense power that both repelled and fascinated her. She was caught between a predator she knew and one she didn't, and the latter felt infinitely more potent. Behind her, the faint, acrid scent of the Kestovar trackers grew stronger, a slow, methodical advance through the undergrowth. They were hunting her, guided by Bram's ruthless decree. Before her, this new, formidable presence. She was trapped in a tightening vice, the forest itself becoming a suffocating cage. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drum against the silence of the ancient woods. Every shadow seemed to lengthen, every rustle of leaves a threat. She moved deeper, instinctively drawn towards the source of the dominant scent, hoping that perhaps the very presence of another alpha, especially one so formidable, would deter the Kestovar hunters. It was a desperate gamble, a leap into the unknown, but the alternative was capture and an unspoken fate that chilled her to the bone. The terrain grew wilder, the trees denser, their gnarled roots forming treacherous obstacles beneath a thick carpet of moss. The air grew colder, carrying a faint metallic tang she couldn't quite place, but it settled in her stomach like a stone. As she pressed on, she began to notice subtle shifts in the forest. The trees here seemed older, grander, their bark scarred with the passage of centuries. The undergrowth was less disturbed, suggesting fewer human or even wolf inhabitants. But there were signs: a snapped branch, too clean for nature, a faint, almost invisible track in the soft earth, the lingering scent of smoke, not from a campfire, but something older, deeper, like a hearth that had burned for generations. This was a claimed territory, one held with an iron grip. This was the domain of the shadowed lord she'd heard whispers of in hushed tones, a mythic alpha whose name was rarely spoken in the Kestovar lands, a chieftain of the desolate northern wastes. A sudden sharp snap of a twig shattered the stillness. Close, too close. Cyrus froze, pressing herself against the rough bark of a towering spruce, her breath catching in her throat. The scent of Kestovar was potent now, unmistakable. They were within striking distance. She could hear the rustle of their boots, the low, guttural grunts of experienced trackers. Panic flared, cold and sharp. Her quiet wolf let out a distressed whine, a sound that seemed to echo in her very bones. Then a new sound, deeper, more guttural, vibrated through the earth. A growl. It wasn't human, not fully wolf, but something in between. A sound of ancient power and raw warning. It came from ahead, from the direction of the dominant alpha's scent, and it ripped through the forest, silencing the Kestovar hunters instantly. The rustling stopped. The grunts ceased. A suffocating silence descended, broken only by the frantic pounding of Cyrus's own heart. She peered through the dense foliage, her eyes straining in the gloom. The growl had been a territorial challenge, a clear declaration of ownership. The Kestovar hunters, for all their loyalty to Bram, were smart enough to recognize a force they dared not cross. There was a tense standoff, a silent war of wills playing out in the dark. Then a whispered curse, the sound of retreating footsteps, quick and furtive. They were gone, for now. Cyrus sank against the tree, gasping, her body trembling uncontrollably. She was safe from Bram's trackers, but at what cost? She was now deep within the territory of an alpha, whose presence was more unsettling than any threat she had ever faced. She pushed herself up, her legs wobbly, and continued forward, drawn by an irresistible curiosity, a primal instinct to understand the power that had just saved her. The trees parted slightly, revealing a small, moonlit clearing. And there he was. He was massive, even in human form, a towering silhouette against the pale wash of moonlight. His shoulders were broad, his posture radiating an almost palpable aura of danger and command. His hair, a wild mane the color of raven's wings, fell past his shoulders, framing a face that was more chiseled granite than flesh. A deep, jagged scar bisected his left brow, disappearing into his hairline, a stark testament to battles fought and survived. His eyes, when they turned towards her, were not the silver gold of Kestevar, but a molten gold, ancient and piercing, burning with an intensity that seemed to strip away her very soul. They glowed in the darkness, feral and utterly captivating. He wore simple dark leather, scarred and worn, hinting at a life lived far from the polished halls of kings. Around his neck, a single rough-hewn bone hung on a leather thong, a primal talisman. He moved with a silent, fluid grace, a predator observing its prey. His scent, up close, was overwhelming. Smoke, earth, old blood, and a potent, musky pheromone that screamed alpha. Her quiet wolf, usually so timid, felt a powerful jolt, a strange mix of terror and an almost magnetic pull. A response she had never felt with Bram, not even in their most intimate moments. This was a true alpha, one whose power resonated with the deepest, most ancient parts of her being. His gaze locked onto hers, cold, assessing, utterly devoid of warmth. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence was a language unto itself, a declaration of absolute dominance. Cyrus felt her knees threaten to buckle. She was an Omega, unmated, disgraced, and utterly exposed before this formidable being. Her humiliation, her fear, her very secret seemed laid bare before those burning golden eyes. Then he took a step forward, slow, deliberate. Each movement was a ripple of coiled power. The air around him seemed to crackle with an unspoken threat, a silent question. He stopped just meters from her, his sheer size overwhelming, casting her in his shadow even under the moonlight. His eyes never left hers, probing, searching, as if trying to decipher the secrets hidden within her. She could feel the raw power emanating from him, a force that both threatened to crush her and offered an unexpected, bewildering sense of something akin to safety. "Who are you?" His voice was a low rumble, like stones shifting deep beneath the earth, rough and commanding. It resonated through her, stirring something deep within her quiet wolf, an echo of a sound she didn't know she possessed. "And why do you trespass in the lands of the Shadowed Lord?" His question hung in the air, a potent challenge, and Cyrus, who had felt mute for so long, felt a sudden, desperate urge to speak, to answer, to justify her very existence before this enigmatic, terrifying alpha. Her heart pounded, and the metallic tang in the air suddenly sharpened, as if the very forest held its breath, waiting for her answer. The Shadowed Lord's voice, a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through the earth and settled in Cyrus's bones, pierced through the suffocating silence. "Who are you, and why do you trespass in the lands of the Shadowed Lord?" His golden eyes, luminous in the gloom, bore into her, stripping away her defenses, exposing the raw vulnerability she had tried so desperately to conceal. The primal musk of his presence was overwhelming, a potent blend of pine, damp earth, and something ancient and wild that spoke of dominion. Cyrus's throat was tight, constricted not just by fear, but by the weight of her unspoken truths. For so long she had allowed Bram's dismissive judgments to define her, to mute her. She was the Omega, the quiet one, the one whose wolf barely whimpered. But faced with this formidable alpha, an instinct deeper than shame surged within her. She was a survivor. She had a right to exist, a right to speak. "My name is Cirrus Helene," she managed, her voice a reedy whisper, rough from disuse and dehydration. It felt alien on her tongue, fragile against the vastness of the forest and the immense power emanating from him. I am an outcast, banished from the Kestevar dominion." His gaze didn't soften, but a flicker, not of sympathy, but of intense scrutiny, crossed his face. "Kestevar," he rumbled, the name laced with a disdain that was almost palpable. "The king's pet, perhaps? I recognize the scent of his pack on you, faint though it is now." His nostrils flared, drawing in her scent, A gesture so primal, so intimate, it sent a shiver down her spine. He was not just looking at her, he was reading her, absorbing every nuance of her fear, her exhaustion, her hidden pain. Humiliation threatened to choke her again. "I was once considered his prospective consort," she admitted, the words a bitter confession. "But he chose power. He chose the council. He cast me out." She felt the familiar sting of tears, but refused to let them fall. Not here, not before him. Her quiet wolf stirred, a flicker of defiance beneath the shame. The Shadowed Lord's lips, thin and firm, curled into something that might have been a sneer, or perhaps a grim acknowledgement. "A king who chooses power first never stops choosing it," he echoed. His voice surprisingly soft now, though still gravelly, as if reciting an ancient prophecy. His golden eyes, however, sharpened, piercing through her facade. "You carry more than just his scent, Cyrus Helene. You carry his fear." Her breath hitched. He saw it. He knew. The secret, the dangerous knowledge that Bram would kill to keep buried, was suddenly exposed to the stranger. A wave of terror washed over her, chilling her to the bone. This alpha was not just powerful, he was perceptive, dangerous in a way Bram Kestevar could never be. He took another step, closing the remaining distance between them, until he was mere inches away. His height was immense, forcing her to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. The scent of him enveloped her, a dizzying cocktail of strength, wildness, and an unexpected subtle hint of something akin to sorrow. He reached out a hand, large and calloused, scarred across the knuckles. Cyrus flinched, instinctively recoiling, her quiet wolf whimpering a silent protest. His hand paused midair, a fraction of an inch from her cheek. He didn't touch her, but the heat radiating from his palm was palpable, a strange current that both alarmed and mesmerized her. "Do you fear me, little Omega?" he asked, his voice a low growl, a challenge more than a question. I fear what I do not know," she stammered, her voice still trembling. "And I fear what Bram Kestevar will do to silence me." His gaze held hers, unwavering. "Then you have chosen wisely, coming into my lands. The Kestevar king's reach ends at my borders. Here, his word means nothing. His hunters are driven back by my will, not yours." He paused, his golden eyes sweeping over her weary, dirt-streaked face, taking in her bruised spirit. "But you are not free, Cyrus Helene, not yet. You are a trespasser, a displaced creature. And in my territory, all things serve a purpose." His words were not a promise of safety, but a declaration of ownership. She had escaped one cage only to find herself within the invisible boundaries of another, far more ancient and formidable. Yet there was a strange, raw honesty in his dominance, a stark contrast to Bram's gilded deceit. What purpose could I serve?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, the question laced with a profound weariness. She was an Omega, exiled, without a pack, without a mate. She had nothing to offer. A corner of his mouth quirked, a fleeting, almost imperceptible shift that softened the harsh lines of his face. It was the first hint of anything other than stern authority she had seen. "That remains to be seen," he murmured. "But for now, you are under my protection, and my protection comes with conditions." He lowered his hand, though the lingering warmth remained, a ghost of a touch. "My name is Veles Varkos, and in these lands, my word is law. You will tell me what you know of Bram Kestevar's fear, every detail, and in return, you will have sanctuary." Sanctuary, the word was a balm to her battered soul, even if it came with a heavy price. She could finally rest, finally feel safe from the relentless pursuit. But the intensity of Veles's gaze, the sheer force of his presence, made it clear that this was no benevolent offering. This was a pact, a trade, her knowledge for his protection. And the deep, unsettling hum of her quiet wolf, no longer whimpering but now a low, continuous thrum, told her that this interaction was far more significant than she could yet comprehend. This scarred, formidable alpha, with his molten gold eyes, was not just a protector, he was a catalyst, a force that was about to awaken something dormant within her, something she had long believed was lost. The choice was stark: remain a hunted exile, or trust the Shadowed Lord, and uncover not just Bram's secrets, but her own. The air crackled with unspoken tension, and the chill of the night seemed to deepen, waiting for her answer. The word hung in the cold night air, sanctuary. It was a siren song to Cyrus's battered soul, a promise of respite from the ceaseless flight, from the gnawing fear of Bram's hunters. Yet Velis Varkos, the shadowed lord, offered it not as a gift, but as a transaction. Her knowledge for his protection. His molten gold eyes, ancient and piercing, held hers captive, demanding an answer. The raw power emanating from him was a tangible force, both terrifying and undeniably alluring, stirring a perplexing mix of terror and an almost magnetic draw within her quiet wolf. Sanctuary, she repeated, the word tasting foreign and wondrous on her tongue. And in return, I tell you everything I know about Bram Kestevar's fear. It wasn't a question, but a statement of acceptance. She had nothing left to lose, and everything to gain, even if that gain meant trading one form of servitude for another. At least this time she would know the terms. A ghost of a smile, fleeting and almost imperceptible, touched Velis's lips. It softened the harsh planes of his face for just a moment, revealing a hint of something deeper, more complex beneath the formidable mask. Yes, he rumbled, his voice a low thrum that vibrated through her chest. Everything, the truths he buried, the lies he built his throne upon. Secrets, Karis Helene, are powerful things, and a king's secrets are often his undoing. He turned abruptly, his dark cloak swirling around him like a shadow, and began to walk deeper into the forest. Come, he commanded, not waiting for her assent. The night grows colder, and even in my lands, the wilderness can be unforgiving. Cirrus hesitated for only a moment, then followed, her legs still shaky, but now fueled by a desperate hope. She moved behind him, her eyes fixed on his broad, powerful back. He walked with a silent, predatory grace, his senses keenly attuned to the whispers of the forest. The air around him still crackled with an undeniable force, but now, mixed with the musky dominance, she detected a faint, almost imperceptible undertone of something else, a deep, ingrained sorrow, like the scent of old, burnt wood. It was a contradiction that fascinated her, drawing her in despite her ingrained fear. They walked for what felt like hours, the moon now high overhead, casting long, eerie shadows. The forest grew even denser, the trees ancient sentinels guarding hidden paths. Finally, through a thick veil of ancient moss and gnarled branches, a clearing opened up, revealing a sight that stole Cyrus's breath. Nestled within a natural hollow, almost swallowed by the surrounding wilderness, was a small, secluded village. It wasn't the grand, imposing stone architecture of the Kestevar castle, but a collection of sturdy, rough-hewn timber longhouses, their roofs thatched with thick layers of dried grass. Smoke curled lazily from stone chimneys, carrying the warm, inviting scent of wood smoke and roasting meat. The entire settlement radiated a quiet, resilient energy, a stark contrast to the opulent but calculating Kestevar dominion. This was a pack that lived by different rules, closer to the earth, to the primal essence of their wolf. As they approached, figures emerged from the longhouses, silent and watchful. These were his people. Their faces were weathered, their eyes sharp, their movements fluid and powerful. They were not the polished, disciplined warriors of Bram's court, but fierce, untamed shifters, each bearing the scars of a life lived on the edge of civilization. They looked at Velis with a reverence that bordered on awe, their gazes deferential, but then they turned to Cyrus, their expressions shifting to wary curiosity, suspicion, and even a hint of hostility. She felt their assessment, the subtle scent of their suspicion hitting her. She was an outsider, a Kestevar, and a potential threat. Her quiet wolf recoiled, shrinking further inward. Veles, however, ignored their silent judgment. He led her to one of the smaller longhouses, its door made of heavy, scarred timber. Inside, a fire crackled merrily in a central hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air was warm, rich with the smell of pine and simmering herbs. A rough-hewn table and 2 benches occupied the center of the room. It was simple, austere, but welcoming in a way the Kestevar castle had never been. "You will rest here," Velis commanded, his voice softer now, though still firm. "You are exhausted. Tomorrow we speak, and you begin to earn your sanctuary." He paused at the door, his golden eyes sweeping over her once more. This time, Cyrus thought she detected a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. Not tenderness, but a deep, knowing understanding, as if he saw beyond her surface, beyond the disgraced Omega, to something vital buried deep within. He left, closing the heavy door behind him, plunging her into a silence that was broken only by the crackling fire. Cyrus sank onto one of the benches, her body finally betraying its exhaustion. The journey had taken its toll, stripping her of everything she thought she was. But looking at the dancing flames, a strange sense of peace began to settle over her. She was safe for now. As the warmth of the fire seeped into her bones, she began to take stock. She was in the territory of the Shadowed Lord, a man whose presence was as unsettling as it was compelling. He was scarred, burdened, and utterly dominant. And for some inexplicable reason, a spark of hope, cold and fragile, began to ignite within her. Her quiet wolf, which had been so dormant, now stirred with a persistent low thrum, a silent song of recognition. Perhaps here, among these wild, ancient people, away from the gilded cages of Bram's court, she might finally find a voice. Perhaps here, she might finally begin to understand the true nature of the power she held, the truth that made a king fear her. She closed her eyes, the scent of wood smoke filling her lungs, and for the first time in days, she felt the tenuous promise of sleep, knowing that the next day would bring revelations that would bind her fate irrevocably to the formidable Alpha, who now held her sanctuary in his scarred hands. The true depths of Bram's betrayal and the profound, dangerous secrets she held were about to be laid bare. The morning light filtered through the small, oiled parchment window of the longhouse was soft and ethereal, painting the rough-hewn timber walls with a gentle glow. Cyrus awoke to the unfamiliar sounds of a bustling village, the distant thud of an axe, the low murmur of voices, the scent of wood smoke and freshly baked bread. For a moment, a wave of disorienting fear washed over her, the ingrained terror of being hunted. Then the memory of Velis Varkos, his golden eyes, his deep voice, and the word sanctuary settled over her, easing the knot in her stomach. She rose, her muscles stiff and aching, but surprisingly rested. The simple meal left for her, a bowl of hearty stew and thick dark bread, tasted like the finest feast. As she ate, she felt a profound shift within her. The acute, crushing shame of her dismissal from Kestevar had begun to recede, replaced by a quiet strength, a hardening resolve. She was no longer just the disgraced Omega. She was a survivor, a keeper of dangerous truths, and now a guest in the formidable territory of Velis Varkos. The heavy door creaked open, and Velis stepped inside. He filled the small space, his presence as overwhelming as ever. He wore the same simple leathers, but his hair, usually wild, was now pulled back in a practical braid, revealing the stark line of the scar over his brow. His golden eyes, usually intense, seemed a shade softer in the morning light, though no less sharp. The musky scent of pine and ancient earth clung to him, a comforting anchor in her new, uncertain reality. "You have eaten," he stated, his voice a low rumble. "Good, we have much to discuss." He gestured toward the bench opposite her, then sat, his movements fluid and powerful. The table a barrier and a conduit separated them. "I am ready," Cyrus replied, her voice stronger than she expected. She met his gaze directly, a quiet defiance blooming within her. She would not cower, not anymore. "Tell me everything," Velis commanded, leaning forward, his elbows resting on the table. "From the moment Bram Kestevar began to change, to the night he cast you out, every whisper, every strange occurrence, every fear you saw in his eyes." Cyrus began to speak, slowly at first, then with increasing confidence as the dam of her suppressed memories broke. She spoke of Bram's growing paranoia, his obsession with ancient Kestevar prophecies, particularly one concerning a blood moon prophecy, and the unification of all shifter territories under a single banner. She recounted the hushed council meetings, the strange, secretive rituals he began to perform, drawing on forbidden lore from texts she had only glimpsed. He was obsessed with power, she explained, her voice tightening with remembered pain. But it wasn't just a desire for control. It was a terror of losing it. He believed that if he didn't consolidate power, if he didn't become the undisputed Alpha King, then a prophecy foretold the utter destruction of our kind. Velis listened intently, his golden eyes never leaving her face, absorbing every word, every nuance. His expression remained impassive, but Saris could feel his focus, a palpable current of energy that both unnerved and encouraged her. The truth he fears most, she continued, lowering her voice, is that he discovered a flaw in the ancient bloodline, a weakness, a vulnerability that could unravel the entire Kestevar dominion. He was seeking a way to purify it, to erase it, to become truly invincible. He believed he was destined to be the alpha of alphas, the one to fulfill the prophecy and prevent the coming catastrophe. But to do so, he needed absolute, unquestioning loyalty. And I saw too much. I saw the fear beneath the ambition. I saw the desperation. Velis slowly nodded, a grim understanding dawning in his eyes. The Kestevar bloodline has always been fractured, he mused, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. Strong, yes, but prone to a certain fragility when pushed to extremes. It explains much. He paused, then his gaze sharpened, focusing on something deeper within her. And what of your own blood, Saris Helene? You carry the mark of a powerful lineage, though it is muted. And your wolf? It is quiet, yes, but not silent. It pulses with an ancient song, one I have not heard in centuries. Saris felt a jolt. Her own blood, her wolf? She was an Omega, her lineage unremarkable, her wolf notoriously quiet. I don't understand, she admitted, her brow furrowing. My wolf has always been hesitant. Others call me wolfless. Velis leaned back, his golden eyes piercing, almost seeing into her very soul. A lie, fostered by those who fear what you truly are. Your wolf is not hesitant, Saris Helene. It is subdued, suppressed. It has been waiting for a catalyst, a challenge, a true alpha to awaken it. And I feel it now stirring within you, a vibrant, ancient energy that resonates with my own. His words hit her with the force of a physical blow, awakening something deep within her that she had long believed dead. Her quiet wolf, which had been a faint hum, now thrummed with a sudden, powerful surge of energy, a warmth spreading through her veins. It was a startling sensation, a profound recognition, an echoing throb that matched the intensity in Velis's golden eyes. For a fleeting moment, a spark ignited between them, a primal connection that transcended words, a bond awakening in the most unexpected of circumstances. What does that mean?" she whispered, her voice laced with a mixture of awe and fear. Velis's gaze softened, a rare, almost tender expression gracing his scarred face. He reached across the table, his large, calloused hand gently covering hers. His touch was warm, comforting, yet charged with an electric energy that made her breath catch. "It means, Saris Helene," he rumbled, his thumb tracing the delicate bones of her hand, "that Bram Kestevar fears more than just his own weakness. He fears your strength. He fears the truth of your blood, the power of your wolf, and what it could mean for his claim to the throne. You are not an outcast, little Omega. You are a key, and perhaps a queen." His words resonated through her, shattering the last vestiges of her self-doubt. A queen, she the disgraced Omega, the wolfless exile? The thought was staggering, impossible. Yet, as Velis's thumb continued its slow, hypnotic caress, and her wolf surged with an undeniable, vibrant energy, Saris felt a powerful shift within her. It wasn't just Bram's secrets they were discussing now, but her own. Her true identity, her latent power, was beginning to unfurl, awakened by the touch of this formidable, scarred alpha. The air in the longhouse crackled with an unspoken promise, a future unfolding that was far more dangerous and far more glorious than she had ever dared to dream. Velis's touch was not just a comfort. It was a revelation, a silent claim that sent a dizzying wave of recognition through her, binding her to him in a way she couldn't yet understand. Velis's touch, warm and electrifying, lingered on Saris's hand, a silent claim that resonated deep within her. His words, "You are a key." And perhaps a queen, echoed in her mind, shattering the carefully constructed narratives of her past. She, the quiet Omega, the one cast aside, A queen? The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. Her wolf no longer merely stirring, now pulsed with a vibrant, undeniable energy, a powerful hum that vibrated in perfect harmony with Velas's presence. It was a sensation she had never experienced with Bram, a true primal awakening. A queen, she whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. How can that be? My lineage is nothing. My wolf has always been subdued. Velas's golden eyes held hers, a knowing intensity burning within them. He squeezed her hand gently. Lineage is not always about titles, Cyrus Helene. Sometimes it is about the ancient magic that flows through your veins, the essence of who you truly are. Your wolf, the one they called subdued, is not weak. It has been dormant, waiting for the right moment, the right catalyst. And that catalyst, I believe, is the very prophecy Bram Kestevar so desperately seeks to control. He released her hand, the warmth of his touch leaving a tingling sensation on her skin. He rose and moved to the small hearth, stoking the embers until a fresh flame licked at the kindling. The shifting shadows danced around him, making him seem both mythical and utterly real. The blood moon prophecy, he began, his voice dropping to a low, reverent tone, speaks not just of the unification of territories, but of the unification of ancient bloodlines. It foretells a time when a new alpha, born of both strength and a forgotten magic, will rise to prevent the ultimate destruction of our kind. Bram Kestevar believes he is that alpha, but he is missing a critical piece. He is trying to force the prophecy, to bend it to his will through rituals and power grabs. And what is that critical piece? Kairos asked, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and anticipation. Velas turned, his eyes piercing. The prophecy speaks of a mate, Cyrus, an omega seemingly quiet and unassuming, yet carrying the dormant blood of a forgotten lunar lineage, a wolf whose true nature is revealed only under the rarest of celestial alignments, a wolf whose roar can either shatter or unite. Bram believes he must find this mate, claim her, to unlock the prophecy's full power, but he has missed the truth. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. He fears your blood, Cyrus, because your maternal line, though long believed to be insignificant, carries the ancient true lunar mark, a mark that awakens only when faced with absolute betrayal, absolute danger, and then a true, unwavering bond, a bond with an alpha who recognizes the inherent power in humility, not just dominance. Cyrus felt a dizzying sensation, as if the ground beneath her feet had shifted. Lunar lineage? The mark? She looked down at her hands, then instinctively touched her temple, where a faint, almost invisible birthmark had always resided. A small silver crescent moon, easily dismissed as a beauty mark. Could it be? The night he cast you out, Velas continued, his voice softer now. The moon was almost full, preparing for the rare blood moon, the betrayal, the public humiliation. It was meant to break you, but instead, it awakened something. I felt it, Cyrus. A ripple in the ancient currents. Your wolf, the true wolf, began to stir that night. He stepped closer again, his presence enveloping her. I have heard whispers of the Kestevar king's growing madness, his desperate attempts to force the prophecy. He seeks to marry into a powerful warrior clan, hoping to forge the missing link, unaware that the true power has already been set free, cast out by his own hand. Cyrus's mind reeled. Bram wasn't just removing a discarded lover, he was trying to suppress a threat he couldn't fully comprehend, a threat that was intertwined with his own destiny. And she, the supposedly insignificant Omega, was at the heart of it. The betrayal now felt less personal and more like a cruel twist of fate, a catalyst for something far grander. What do we do? She asked, her voice filled with a new resolve. Her quiet wolf was no longer quiet. It was a vibrant, insistent hum, a powerful song of awakening, resonating with every beat of her heart. Velas's gaze met hers, a shared understanding passing between them. We prepare, he stated, his voice firm, resolute. Bram Kestevar will not rest until he has silenced you, or claimed you for his own, believing you hold the key to his ambition. He will not stop until he finds you. We must be ready for his hunters and for his arrogance. But we will not fight his way. We will fight with truth, with strength. and with a bond that he, in his pursuit of power, could never understand. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek. His thumb brushed over the faint crescent moon birthmark on her temple, a tender, possessive gesture that sent a shockwave through her. Her breath hitched. The air crackled with unspoken electricity, a profound intimacy that went beyond mere physical attraction. This was a recognition, a deep, ancient bond blossoming between two broken souls, two destined paths. "You are not alone, Cirrus Helene," he rumbled, his golden eyes burning with an intensity that promised both protection and a shared destiny. "Your wolf is no longer quiet, and it is calling to mine." The words, the touch, the profound connection that surged between them were a revelation. His scent, once a mix of danger and dominance, now held a deep, comforting warmth, a sense of belonging she had never known. Her wolf surged, a powerful, joyous roar echoing in the depths of her soul, no longer suppressed, but fully awakened, vibrant and fiercely alive. The future was uncertain, fraught with danger and the looming threat of Bram's power, but standing before Velis Varkos, Kairos Helene felt a strength, a purpose, and a bond that promised to change not just her world, but the very fabric of their shifter kind. The hunt was far from over, but now she was no longer merely prey. She was a rising force, bound to the Shadowed Lord, ready to face the Tyrant King. The battle for the future and for her own destiny had truly begun. The silence that followed the blood moon was not the suffocating stillness of fear, but the profound, resonant peace of true dawn. The battle had been less a clash of claws and fangs, and more a war of wills, of truths against carefully constructed lies. Bram Kestevar, consumed by his desperate ambition and twisted interpretation of the prophecy, had arrived at the borders of Velis's dominion, not with overwhelming force, but with a calculated display of power, demanding Cirrus's return. He expected her to be broken, compliant. He found her transformed. Cyrus stood beside Velis, her hand clasped firmly in his, beneath the ethereal glow of the waning blood moon. Her wolf, once a timid whisper, now surged within her, a vibrant, powerful presence that thrummed with ancient lunar magic. She met Bram's furious, bewildered gaze, not with fear, but with an unwavering certainty that shook him to his core. Velis, the Shadowed Lord, had stood as her bulwark, his sheer presence radiating a primal authority that made even Bram's seasoned warriors hesitate. It was Cyrus, however, who delivered the final, devastating blow. With Velis's subtle encouragement, she had spoken. Her voice, no longer hesitant, resonated with a clarity and power she had never known, detailing Bram's secret fears, his desperate attempts to purify his bloodline, and the true dark nature of his rituals. She exposed his manipulation of the prophecy, his true motivation not for unity, but for absolute tyrannical control. She spoke of the hidden vulnerability in his Kestevar lineage, the very secret he had fought so desperately to suppress, the flaw he believed only her lunar blood could rectify. And then she revealed her own wolf, not with a full shift, but with a controlled surge of lunar energy that radiated from her, her eyes flashing with a silvery light that mirrored the moon above, the crescent mark on her temple glowing faintly. The effect was immediate and devastating. Bram's warriors, who had witnessed her humiliation, who had dismissed her as a wolfless omega, recoiled in shock and awe. The very ground seemed to hum with her awakened power. Bram, stripped of his carefully constructed authority, his lies exposed, his true fear laid bare, was a pathetic figure, his power fractured, not by Vel's might, but by the undeniable truth emanating from the woman he had so carelessly discarded. He had sought to control the blood moon prophecy, to make it his own. Instead, it had been fulfilled through his very betrayal, awakening the true lunar omega and binding her to an alpha who sought not dominance, but balance. He left, his pack slowly retreating, not defeated in battle, but broken by the revelation that their king was a fraud, a tyrant driven by fear. He would never again hold the same sway, his dominion irrevocably weakened. In the aftermath, the northern wastes blossomed. The pack, once wary of Cirrus, now looked at her with respect, even reverence. They had seen her strength, her truth, her quiet dignity in the face of a king's wrath. She was no longer an outcast, She was their Luna, not by title, but by right, by the undeniable power of her awakened wolf, and the ancient magic flowing through her veins. Life with Veles was a revelation. Their bond, forged in the crucible of betrayal and shared purpose, deepened with each passing day. He was a demanding alpha, uncompromising in his principles, but beneath the scarred exterior lay a profound tenderness, a fierce protectiveness that resonated with every fiber of her being. He saw her, truly saw her, not as a tool or a weakness, but as an equal, a partner, a force to be reckoned with. One evening, weeks after Bram's retreat, they stood together on a high ridge overlooking the thriving village. The moon, full in silver, cast a gentle glow over the ancient forest. Velez's arm was wrapped securely around her waist, drawing her close against his strong side. His scent, pine, earth, and the unique musk of his powerful wolf, enveloped her, a comforting blanket of belonging. "You have brought true light to these lands, Karis," he rumbled, his voice low and intimate, his lips brushing against her hair. "More than I ever dared to hope for. My people thrive under your wisdom." "My heart, it has found its home." Cyrus leaned into his embrace, her fingers tracing the rough leather of his tunic. Her wolf purred contentedly within her, a melody of peace and profound love. "And you, Veles Varkos, have shown me my true strength," she replied, her voice filled with an emotion so vast it almost overwhelmed her. "You awakened the wolf I thought was lost, and showed me that my quiet nature was not a weakness, but a wellspring of power. You taught me that true love is not about leverage, but about unwavering belief." He turned her in his arms, his golden eyes, once burning with an untamed wildness, now softened with an overwhelming tenderness as they met hers. "Our bond," he murmured, his thumb gently caressing the crescent moon mark on her temple, "is a promise, Cyrus, a promise of a future built not on fear, but on truth, on unity, on love." He lowered his head, his breath warm against her lips. The air crackled with an undeniable energy, a deep, primal connection that mirrored the ancient power of their wolves. And then he kissed her. It was a kiss that spoke of ancient vows, of battles fought and won, of two souls finally finding their other half. It was a kiss that sealed their destiny, a powerful unspoken claim that echoed through the silence of the night, resonating with the very heartbeat of the land. Cyrus Helene, the once disgraced Omega, stood as Luna of the northern wastes, a powerful force beside her formidable Alpha. She had walked through the fire of betrayal and emerged stronger, more whole, her quiet wolf now a magnificent, vibrant song. The Kestovar dominion might still exist, but its power was forever diminished, its king's ambition shattered by the very truth he had tried to bury. Here, in the wild, untamed lands of the Shadowed Lord, a new era had begun, an era of genuine unity, of fierce loyalty, and of a love that defied all prophecies and bound two powerful souls together eternally. Their story was not just a testament to survival, but to the enduring, transformative power of a love found after everything else was lost.